Every day, we build the world around us.
But who's checking in on us?
Welcome to Built4Us.
It's a brand new podcast.
Built by construction workers, for construction workers.
It's our own honest space.
There's no scripts, there's no suits. It's just
Real talk about mental health, stress,
And showing up for each other.
Welcome to Built4Us, episode 15, the podcast for construction workers by construction workers. My name's Steve Kirby from SK Life Coach UK. This episode, we're going to be talking about therapy. Now, I'm going to introduce you guys. Well, you can introduce yourselves, guys, and let me know who you are.
Thanks, Steve. Well, my name's Clive Branson. I'm an inspirational speaker. I'm really, really pleased to be getting into today as we're going to be talking about therapy. But Vish, over to you, pal.
Thanks, mate. I'm Vish, the founder of Onward Shift, a mental health hub supporting the construction industry. I'm an electrician by trade and been on the tools for a whopping 16 years now. But therapy, guys, this is going to be one of those conversations, isn't it? I've never heard three blokes from construction talking about therapy. Where do we start? Where do we go?
I'll start if you want. So, for me, I worked in construction for 20 years as a machine operator, site supervisor. Started at the age of 20, but at the age of 32, I was involved in a major accident on site. I was literally blown up doing a pressure test. Now, without going into all of that, that's another episode for anyone who doesn't know the story. I suffered massively with PTSD, anxiety, depression. I self-medicated because of the flashbacks and just trying to block it out, if you like. Now, my attitude towards therapy before that accident, if someone had said, "Oh, if you're struggling about, go and see a therapist," I'd have said, "Not a chance. I'll deal with it," because that's the way I was brought up. It's just I was brought up on a bit of a rough estate, council estate, and me, my mum, my sister. And whenever I was sad, angry, struggling with anything as a kid, all I'd get is, "Man up, son, deal with it." And I brought that kind of mentality. I grew up with that. So when I was in construction, right through to the age of 32 before that accident, if someone had mentioned therapy to me, I'd have said, "Fuck off." Do you know what I mean? I'll deal with it. I'll sort it. But yeah, I fell down a big dark hole really, really fast after the accident. Again, self-medicating, drinking every day to block it out, angry, taking my frustrations out on my kids, like shouting at my kids, arguing with my missus, to the point I believed they'd have all been better off if I'd have died that day. That's where it went. Now, we're only talking maybe 3 months after the accident. I went from being a kind of happy-go-lucky, all the confidence in the world, to having no self-confidence and believing my family would be better off if I'm not here. And literally drove myself, pissed out my head, been drinking all day, drove myself to a bridge, ready to jump. Thankfully, I couldn't do it. When I got home, my partner at the time, literally, because I couldn't tell her where I'd been. I couldn't tell her I've just been to jump off a bridge. She was like, "Where you been?" I was like, "Nowhere." And she said, "Right, you either get help, you're in a doctor and get help, or you pack a bag and leave." And I was like, "I'm leaving anyhow." And I went to pack a bag. Cut a real long story short, my little boy was behind me, 4 years old, crying his eyes out. He just looked at me and said, "Please don't go, Daddy." And in that moment, I broke. And the next day, a doctor came out to me, told me I had PTSD, anxiety, depression. I laughed at him and said, "Guys like me don't get PTSD. PTSD was something I associated with veterans, with the forces, people who've been to war." And they explained that anybody that's gone through any trauma, even bereavement, loss, accident, whatever it is, can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I got an appointment the very next day. I was really lucky. I got an appointment to go to a mental health hospital. And I sat with a lady, told her everything, crying my eyes out. And that first therapist was really truthful. And she just looked at me and said, "Steve, I'm really sorry, but I'm not qualified enough to help." Like, she didn't have the confidence, I don't think, to work with me. So they sent me away, which was a bit traumatic for me because I believed nobody could help me. But then the following day, I got another appointment with a different therapist, and I sat with her twice a week for 4 months, and it's through the NHS. But if it wasn't for that therapist, I wouldn't be here today, and I definitely wouldn't be who I am today. But I'll go into a bit more detail about the therapy, but I'll let one of you guys share your experience in therapy.
Thanks for that, mate. That's thanks for sharing all that. I mean, there are some similarities in my backstory. You know, I was brought up in a single parent family. It was my mom and my sister. My dad was around, and he loved me and I loved him, but he emotionally, he was completely void. Had no idea how to express emotions. And if I'd have at any point said, whether when I was joining the RAF, you know, any of these things, "Oh, Dad, you know, I think I'm struggling," I wouldn't have even known how to say that. I wouldn't have, you know, and I certainly wouldn't have said that to him. So that there's the similarity. And with my mom, she'd have tried to make me laugh. She'd have said, "Come on, you know, you're strong, you're this, that, and the other." And that's just, again, I know it's a different time. You know, it's a different time. I respect that, but it wouldn't have been on the table. So my own personal circumstances were, I didn't get offered therapy until after the fact. So there was a perfect storm for me where I had some medical issues, there was some bereavement, and you know, I crashed. But anxiety was the thing that really gripped me. You know, it can be some things, the stronger string can be depression or whatever, but for me it was real anxiety. It was really quick, and it took me into where I was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, you know, within a matter of a couple of weeks, and I was in there for 10 weeks. So the therapy, although there was a bit of therapy while I was in there, I wasn't in the best place for it, or I wasn't strong enough to recognize it and to get the best from it. And then the therapy that I had on the NHS when I got eventually was welcomed back home, it was, looking back, it was too soon. I wasn't ready for it. You know, it was almost like bang, bang, bang. There was a process, which I hugely appreciate, but I wasn't ready. And again, the similarity, Steve, would be that me and the therapist, it wasn't her fault. We just didn't click. And it's more about me than her.
It's about that rapport, isn't it? It's about having that rapport.
Absolutely, mate. We didn't seem to connect. You know, it was almost like, you know, we were almost going through the paces, really. So it didn't work. Now, obviously, since then, as I've got, you know, went through the identity crisis, you know, learned a lot about myself, you know, I've learned a lot more, and we'll talk about that as this conversation goes on. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but yeah, the highlight for this stage of the conversation is, I am in no way dismissing therapy. It is crucial. But for me personally, for Clive, it was at the wrong time. That was all. Yeah. So, Vish, I'm interested to hear about your initial experience.
Yeah, honestly, you both say it so confidently, and it's absolutely incredible, because for me, this is one of the most difficult conversations I have, because it takes me backwards, and I try and stay forward thinking all the time. But my mental health journey has been absolutely horrendous, to be honest with you. It's weird. It's got three guys talking about mental health, and it's such an uncommon thing, but there's a beauty behind it, I believe. But for me, I've got ADHD and I've got OCD, two things I didn't realize until much later in life. And if I'm honest with you, similar to you guys, single parent household. My dad died of cancer when I was like 2 or 3 years old. I don't even know what he looks like, if I'm honest with you. Brought up in a pretty rough council estate. Life hasn't always been easy, if you like. And then once I reached like probably about 18, 19, 20 years old, I just went on a bit of a backwards journey. If I'm honest with you, I was a bit of a rebel. I enjoyed getting into trouble. And yeah, honestly, it's like this natural adolescence, or whatever you want to call it, progression for a guy who hasn't had much stability in his life, or emotional intelligence, if you like. But I've got to the stage where, if I'm honest with you, my whole world just crumbled apart. I broke up with a partner I was with for a very long time. Then my whole family completely separated due to just internal politics, if you like. Yeah. And it completely broke me. There was literally mornings where I was like, this train coming in front of me is going to be better than making it to lunchtime. I was having phone calls with like the only person I'm close to now is really my sister. And I was having goodbye phone calls with her. I was literally the nights before, I was like, you know what, just like, just having these conversations of just getting things off my chest, her getting stuff off hers, which she didn't really have much, to be fair. It was more a one-way conversation. And in my heart, it was me going like, this is it sort of thing.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I can't say this any more bluntly, but I gave myself two options. Either I literally do something which I can't change forever, and that's take my life, or I'll go see a therapist. I didn't go down the NHS route. I went down the private route, which was a completely different experience. But let me tell you something. The woman I saw, she changed me from a boy to a man. She was just incredible. I saw her every week for 9 months. And then 2 years later, I went back and saw her again because I was going through life again. And yeah, that's sort of where I was. Steve, back to you.
So for me with my therapy, because I didn't know what to expect. You know what I mean? It's not. I didn't understand the mind or anything at that point. I didn't know mental health. I'd never looked into it. It wasn't mentioned as much 15 years ago as it kind of is now. But I had CBT therapy to start with, so she'd get me to ask myself questions about how I could do things differently and what would work better for me. And so basically, she'd sit there with a few comments, but it's you doing all the work, which is what therapy is about. I mean, it's you and it's unloading them emotions, and then it's you figuring out which direction you need to go in. But for me, therapy wasn't great. It was like as soon as my hour was up, even if I was emotional, if I was in a bad state, she'd be like, right, that's it then, Steve, we'll see you again next week. And I'd walk out sometimes feeling worse than I went in, or whether that was just their way of doing it, but that was wrong for me looking back. Now me being, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. I help people in similar situation, but I don't go back over the trauma unless somebody really wants to talk about it. I work moving forward. But yeah, and the thing is with therapy as well, I went there because of the accident that I was involved in, but she took me all the way back to my first memories to see what was triggering and why. So I went there because of this accident, and that's what I had confidence kind of speaking about. But then she wanted to know about everything I'd witnessed as a child, the arguments between my mum and my dad, the fights before they'd separated, stuff on the estate. And for me, that was traumatizing in a sense, like reliving it. But by reliving it, I brought it to the top, if you like, and she gave me ways of dealing with it. So I remember after my last, because another thing when it came to therapy, I was offered antidepressants right from the very beginning, but because of the stigma around them, I refused them because everyone that I knew said, "Oh, once you get on them, you're on them for life," and I said, "No, I don't want them." And I remember on my very last session, she wrote me a prescription for some antidepressants, sertraline or whatever there was, I'm not 100% sure. And I said, I don't want them. And she said, just take them as a backup. And if you do fall back into that hole, they'll help you get out of it. And I remember going away after that last session, and she'd been drumming into me about mindfulness and gratitude and write a gratitude list every morning. And I wouldn't do it because that's too much of a guy to write a gratitude list. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit there and write. That's where my mind was. But when therapy finished, I was probably still, I wasn't suicidal, but I was in a dark place still. I wasn't great. But then, like you, I had two options. I either stayed at that level where I was at and up and down, in and out of depression, anxiety, PTSD, or I learn about the man myself. I learn about the body myself. I learn about how I can control and what other people do to control them, well, to understand their mental health. So I just studied and studied and studied with no intention of doing anything with it other than helping myself. But that journey has now took me to where I am today, where I'm coaching people all over the world. I'm working with organisations all over the UK and Europe, sharing my story, working with them and their guys. Once they've seen my story, they can relate and they've got the confidence to talk about their own issues, their own problems, And a big thing what I say now is, like I said at the beginning, I didn't need therapy because I was manning up, I was dealing with it. I now know, and I say it on all my posts, it takes so much strength to admit that you are not coping. Not just as a guy, anybody, man, woman,
100%.
to admit that you're struggling, it takes so much strength. And for me, that is manning up. And I had 500 people in front of me last week at Reading Stadium. And I said that to them. I explained my background. And I said, I want everyone in this room to man up. I want everyone to become more emotionally aware. I want you to talk about how you're feeling. And I guys crying and all sorts. It's not me. It was like they'd been given this green light to be able to talk. And for me, that's what it's about. If we need to talk, and the best way to do that, the safest way to do that, if you don't want to talk to family, friends, is therapy.
Very true. Very true, Steve. There's a couple of points I want to pick up there. I'm a massive believer in life is that when you want to help people, if you want to talk to people, if you want to connect with people, if you're coming from a lived experience stance, I think you can connect a little bit. Well, you can connect quicker, but I think it's more sustainable, I think. Yeah. You're not learning lines, you know, it's not based on the knowledge, just the knowledge that you've learned from books and from other people. There's a bit of your heart involved there. And the people that you're trying to help will sense that very, very quickly. So I think that's really important. And that's why, Steve, in your case, you're very good at what you do, because it is lived experience. And it's something that I try and do myself. And also something in terms of therapy that I've sort of tried to understand is that, you know, we get ribbed as guys all the time. You know, you can't concentrate on more than one thing at a time. You can't do, you know, but it's actually a neurological fact that a human being, let alone your gender, our mind will struggle to do or concentrate properly and act upon more than two things at any one time. Of course, we can do it, and of course, there's people that can do an awful lot more. But generically, more than two things, the mind is compromised and it struggles to concentrate. Now, what therapy, I think, when done correctly, can do is that it can dissect something. Doesn't have to be painful, doesn't have to go straight to the point of trauma, which is important, but you don't have to go straight to it. But if that therapist can put a handle on something, just an element that you can relate to, that resonates with you, and in a way puts a name on what it is that you're trying to recognize, that really helps you to move forward. It helps the conversation move forward. It helps you to recognize what it is that you're trying to hear, let alone what you're trying to portray yourself. And therapy is excellent for that. It can, you know, done properly, it can strip it away, can't it? And that's what I wasn't ready for. I wasn't at that stage, really. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to feel stable enough to say, all right, then let's just focus in on that. Now, the crisis team, as a result of the time in the psychiatric hospital, they came to the house for a number of weeks afterwards. So that was therapy as well. But it just took me a while to be able to say to myself, hang on a minute, Clive, all these people, they're all helping, the door's open. I've actually got to look inside myself a little bit first. I've got to dare just to open it and just have a look at myself a little bit. And that will allow my mind to open up and hear what they're trying to say, because all they're doing is trying to help me. They've got all the experience. But until my mind opens and accepts the position that I'm in, I'm big on accountability. You know, I really am. Once you feel stable and strong enough to do that, and you realize that you're not the only body that's feeling vulnerable, I think that then the success for that therapy can really kick in.
Yeah, it was one of the simplest explanations that my therapist had given me when I first went about my anxiety, because my anxiety was through the roof. 1 minute I was up, 1 minute I was down. I didn't even leave the house because I thought I'd cheated death and death was coming for me. And she explained fight, flight, and freeze. Now, no, I'd never really heard of that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't do it at school. And she explained that my body is literally, because of the trauma, because of what I've gone through, it either wants to fly, wants to run, or it wants to fight, or it wants to freeze. But it doesn't know what it wants to do, but it knows it has to do one of those three, because because of what the experience I had had. And once I started understanding that and I understood the anxiety, then I understood I can only focus on what's in my control, nothing else.
Yeah.
I started to learn to control my anxiety, but there was a lot after that with obviously meditation and putting myself back through the trauma for the PTSD. But I'm not going to go into all of that. But there is a lot of techniques that really, really help me to get over the depression, the anxiety, and it without the antidepressants. Now, if I'd have taken the antidepressants, I might have got through it a lot quicker. I don't know, but I chose to do it without it, and but again, I won't be where I am today.
It's really
So back to
interesting
you, Vish.
because, yeah, I've actually had a really different experience, and like I think both of you have gone through NHS, and I've actually gone privately. And I'll be honest with you, my experience has been absolutely incredible. I've done coaching for ADHD, life, business, career, nutrition. I've also done seen a psychiatrist for like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the CBT, which is a talking therapy.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I've paid for it, and yes, it's cost a lot of money, but it's been absolutely incredible. Like coming towards an end of a session, I've had structure in my sessions where 10 minutes before we'll be doing a wind down and kind of going over what we've discussed and then setting goals for the future. And then she will hold me accountable for the future appointment as well. But the question I've got, right, we're three blokes and we've all seen female counselors, coaches, or therapists. Now, when I first was looking for a therapist, one, it was really, really hard to find a guy because only 25% of therapists in the UK are men. But I also felt as if seeing a woman might not be the right choice for me. And God, was I wrong. I was so bloody wrong. Honestly, like, funny enough, I've seen 6 or 7 therapists now or coaches, and every single one of them a woman. And it's completely changed my life. Like, what's your opinion on guys seeing female therapists and female seeing guy therapists? Do you think it's beneficial or do you think it's not?
No, I think for me, whether it's therapy or whether it's coaching, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's having that rapport. It's having that conversation with them and seeing if you've got that link between you both where you feel that they can help or you can help them. It's like me now as a coach, whatever my role is when it comes to one-to-ones. I'll never, someone will reach out to me either after one of my talks or even just somebody from social media, see my profile, it is struggling, needs some support. I'll always have a 15-minute conversation with somebody before I agree to move forward because I may not be able to help them. Obviously, you've got mental health issues and then you've got mental illness, and the two completely separate things, but people get them very confused. Now, if someone's hearing voices and all sorts of other stuff, then I'm not the person to help you because it's more than that. Or if somebody comes to me and they're drinking 8 cans a night or they're drinking a bottle of vodka every night, it's like, right, you need to go and detox before I work with you. You know, like, there's a million and one different issues that people can come to you with. But by having that 15-minute conversation, I know whether I can help them or not. I'll try and help anybody I can. But for me, it's like I say, when I first went for therapy, I had the conversation with the first lady, and she just said straight away, she said the same to me, I can't help you, I'm not qualified enough. But I think it's really important, whether it's a male or a female, to have that rapport with somebody. It's like I get a lot of female clients, and a lot of them will say to me, "Oh, I've had therapy for years and it hasn't worked, but your methods really work." And I think that's because I haven't got a degree in psychology. I've got diplomas coming out my ears. I've studied mental health, depression, addiction, all of that for the last 15 years. But as we mentioned earlier, I've got that lived experience, and I've been to them places, and I feel that. So for me, it's the biggest thing is getting that rapport with your therapist or with your coach or whatever it may be, because you might come to me and we might get talking. You just might not like me. You just might like the way I talk or my attitude, and you could be sat there thinking, yeah, this guy's not going to help. I might be the best person to help you, but if you're not feeling that, it's never going to work. So
I think
whether it's male or female, it doesn't really matter as long as we reach out and get help.
I think the problem with that, though, is when you're going through NHS and even some private clinics, you don't get that opportunity for the 15-minute pre-call because they don't have the time to fit that in. But you've always got to remember you're in control. If you actually meet that person and do the first session, it would be awesome to just realize if that person's not right for you, it's okay to step away. It's okay to step away and find somebody else. Like before this podcast, the host actually said something really interesting. Start fish and chips. Some are good, some ain't. And I found that really funny and actually true. Not every therapist or coach or counselor will be the right fit for you, but you absolutely have to pursue with it. Over to you, Clive.
Great points, guys. Both of you. The crisis team that came out to me was the person that actually came for probably 8 times, which was the most sustainable of it was a lady. But I think the only reason we connected and it worked, whatever that means, is that she was very, very good at making the distinction clear to me, the person receiving the therapy, the difference between empathy and sympathy. And I know we've touched on this before, but it's really, really important, because if you're at a low ebb and your mental health is compromised, if all you're receiving is a degree of sympathy, it is not going to help you in the longer term. It's just not. And it might soften the blow initially, and it might make you feel comfortable. Wouldn't me, but it might some. But it just so happened that she was very strong. She was very experienced. And to your point, Steve, we had the rapport because we got each other. I respected that she could be quite, not blunt, but she could speak straight. I could be very honest with my response if I didn't understand, or if I was feeling overwhelmed, or if I thought she was wrong. And we established that very quickly. But Vish, the point you made is this, I think for this podcast, that message is really, really important. That for anybody out there, we're advocating therapy, and we're saying don't be scared of therapy. Don't be scared if you think that you know nothing about therapy. It really, really is. Use embarrassment as the door for success is really important in life, I think. We've got to be prepared to make an arse of ourselves sometimes, but we've got to make sure that we tell people, if your first experience of therapy does not work for you, don't write it off. Don't think that, oh, well, that's it. It's clearly not going to be for me. Don't do that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree.
No, exactly. And that's, I couldn't. And one of the reasons I started doing, I had no intention of becoming a coach. I'd studied the man for myself, for my own self-development, that was it. But then I found myself helping people, and someone said, you should do this as a business. You've got that empathy. Like you just said, the sympathy, the empathy. I don't give any of my clients any sympathy. I don't feel sorry for them. I work with them to get out of that place. And I'm pretty blunt with that. And I think you've got to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People don't. Yeah, some people might need a pat on the back and like, come on, mate, you've got this. But I'm the opposite. I give him a kick up the arse and I'm like, come on, get out of that hole. Like, we need to raise that vibration. We need that energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the reason I got into therapy, because me as a construction worker before the accident, anyone mentioned therapy to me, I'd have said, oh, fuck off. I don't want therapy. You know what I mean? I ain't saying I was a tough guy, but it's just that kind of image. And that was one of the reasons I set up as a coach, to work with guys in construction, because I know there's a lot of guys out there need support, need help, struggling to get it. And whether it's confidence or whatever it is, they don't want to admit that they need therapy. But to be fair, we all need a therapy at some stage. We all need somebody to offload our emotions on. If we can't do it with friends, family, we need to offload those emotions, and the best way to do that is to invest in yourself, get a therapist, get a coach, and it'll change your life. Fish, you mentioned that talking to a female therapist was really beneficial for you. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, that's a great question, mate. Honestly, it added so much perspective to my mind. I've not had many strong female characters in my life that can kind of help me understand much. And seeing a female therapist, it just changed that whole persona, changed my attitude towards women, it changed my attitude towards life. And also, she added this, honestly, how can I explain it? But she added perspective that no man has ever added to me or given me. And it was absolutely fantastic. But something I really want to talk about is because I think we've all spoken so much about the why we got into therapy. But something I really want to touch on is the first experience of therapy. Now, for me, mate, this is going to sound bonkers, right? But I sat down in the seat of the opposite this therapist, and I didn't even want to talk to her. I sat there, and I was like, "This is such a waste of time. I'm paying for this service, but why am I here? Like, honestly, this is not going to be beneficial. This isn't going to achieve anything. This is absolutely woo-woo. What talking's going to help me? Of course it's not." And I kid you not, right? She seriously sat there and went, "Vish, talk to me or don't, you're still going to pay me." And I was like, "Oh, crap." Honestly, you burst out laughing. I went, "Oh, yeah, this is so true." And honestly, the first few sessions, I sat there and I was uncomfortable. I was very, very fidgety. I could not sit. Like, I was constantly doing the butt wiggle in the chair because I was like, time watching. I was like, I need to get out of this place. And it's those little things which you have to stick through because it is so uncomfortable. Sitting in a room opposite someone who's actually paying attention to you and wants to listen is so uncomfortable, but so goddamn worth it. I'm not exaggerating this. I'm not joking with you. Obviously, you guys know, but the listeners who are going to listen to this, it's hard. The first 3 to 6 sessions are really, really hard. But don't be hard on yourself. Stick through it. Make sure you fight through the uncomfortability because it's worth it. I promise you, like, find a good therapist, which, again, as we've discussed many a times, it's not always the first one. It may be a second or third. Once you've got it, I tell ya, stick with it, be consistent, and talk about your emotions. Like, there's this old saying, right? Like you say, Steve, man up. It's absolute bollocks, excuse my language. Man up. For what? Bottle up your emotions, then explode on the people you love on. Or bottle up your emotions and then go punch a wall, or punch a locker, or punch something else. Mate, that's not do nothing.
But that is it. For guys, we're brought up not to talk about our emotions, and when we don't talk about it, it builds and it builds and it builds. It turns into frustration, into anger, into resentment, and then it gets to a point where you've held on to it that much. The only way you can get it out is to hit something, to break something, to get in a fight. But you can stop it way before then. You know, like once you become, you mentioned earlier, emotional intelligence, and I think going for therapy, like as you said, really, really brought on my emotional intelligence. I started thinking more about my feelings, about where I was at, about anger, about frustration, about love, about all of that. And when you're struggling with something as a guy, whether it's jealousy, whether it's anger, it doesn't matter what it is, but any of them kind of negative emotions, if we're not talking about it, eventually it's going to erupt in a certain way. And for me, that's why everybody needs a therapist, because we've all got emotions that we need to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
But yeah, and I've had it both ways. So obviously I've been sat in the opposite chair and received the therapy. I now have clients who I'm now in that chair offering the therapy. And as you said, it's the first 2 or 3 sessions so uncomfortable. You know, like you don't want to say anything, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. But then once you've got that rapport, all of a sudden you're comfortable talking about anything, and you know it's not going to go any further than that room. And that's what I have to encourage. I encourage of all my clients. It's like, look, whatever we're going to talk about now, it stays here. Like, it's between me and you. And if I'm at that point with a client, it's because I believe that I can help them, I can support them. So it is, by that point, I need them to give me 100% in order for me to give them 100%. You know what I mean? And for anybody watching this, listening to this, who sat now thinking, right, these three guys have had therapy. I need to go. I'm going to go and have therapy. As you said, go with it, stick with it, get that report, learn about the man, learn about yourself. And if it's not clicking, it's not working, it's not your fault. It's not your therapist's fault. You're just not clicking. Go to somebody else.
Definitely. And also what I would say to people as well is, I say this to so many people, just in life in general, learn how to get out of your own way. You know, we are so guilty of people, but as guys, as you know, in particular, you know, there was a time in my life where, guys, I would have had a row in an empty house. You know, I didn't even know where the anger was coming from, if I'm honest. You know, I'd trip myself up, and the anger was there. There was resentment, there was jealousy, all these weird and wonderful, wacky things that we all suffer from. But that you know, I was almost on that line too much, too often. But the problem with that was, I was often of the mind to think, well, how can you possibly understand where I'm coming from? You know, you come from a different world. You've got a different experience to me. How can you? You're saying you can help me. You don't understand. What do you? You know, and it was because I was in my own way. You know, I didn't have the maturity or the emotion or my emotional intelligence to think. Just self-search, bit of self-compassion. Looked at myself, not for the answers, not for all the understanding. That's not going to come, you know, straight away. Of course, it isn't. But just have the ability to think, you know what? Maybe I need to just slow down, stop everything. And maybe there are people out there that know more than I do. Maybe there are people out there that have got a better understanding of this and that they can actually help me. So that's another important message, I would say, that, you know, get out of your own way, accept that. Because as guys, we're told all the time, aren't we, that we don't talk. And that is true. But I think some of the problem there is that we're not necessarily given the opportunity to talk. I think once that door's open through our own inner work and through help and support from others, I think we do talk. And I think that's where the progress is.
Clive, can I ask you a question now?
Of course you can.
I think,
because there's this really interesting, like, I love what you said there about having an argument in an empty house. I think a lot of us have been in that position where you're just so wound up. Like, maybe your life isn't going the way you want it to go. Your job's not working out. Your car's broken down. You've just broken up in a relationship. I've just named 3 things that you know I'm going through or have been through in life. But something I really want to kind of ask you is, how do you break that barrier? How do you go, I need to open my mind. I need to allow this person's comments and their experience to actually sink in. How did you do it? Because something that I've, you know, from the podcast we've done is, wow, both of your stories are incredible. But Clive, your mental health journey has been absolutely bonkers. So how did you allow somebody in?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for the question. I think it was the realization to think, Clive, listen, it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, or what you haven't done. You haven't got all the answers. You can't fix everything. You can't permanently steer the ship on your own. And even when you think you've been steering the ship on your own, you haven't been. You know, you've got all these wonderful, incredibly strong, loving people around you. It's not always just about you. So if you're serious, Clive, about quelling some of this madness in your head, if you're serious about stopping being so scared and angry at the world, just stop, anchor yourself, and realize you haven't got all the answers, mate. You haven't. You know, listen to someone that has, and don't be put off when they're not quite right. Don't be put off if you're not connecting, if it's not working. But that realization, that acceptance, I think is what I personally did. I anchored myself, and oh yeah, okay, so I had a severe mental health breakdown, and all that triggered a lot of that process anyway. But even given all that, if I'd have been in my mind, even if it was in my subconscious, if I'd have been defiant, if my subconscious was saying, well, yeah, just get me out of here, I'll get home and everything will be all right. If I'd have had that attitude, A, I might never have come out, but B, I wouldn't have progressed and developed and grown. Because you can grow from trauma. You can develop from trauma. We all actively demonstrate that.
100%.
So that was it for me.
Yeah. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for my trauma. I often get asked, if you could go back to the day of the accident, what would you do different? And from a safety perspective, obviously I'd like, don't go near that fence. But on a personal level, if I was told I can carry on living my life the way I was, the person I was, I wasn't a bad person, but being that person, or I need to go through it all again to be who I am today, I'd go through it all again to be who I am today, because I've self-developed, I learned so much, and I've been on a journey that has taught me so much. And I think one thing that I've learned to do when it comes to mental health and emotions and anger and resentment and all of that is to just let go. It's all from yesterday, it's all from the past, and we drag it along with us, but we can't change it, and it's done. So basically, stop pulling that rope, let go of it, and just let that emotion drop. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen the second you let go of that rope or drop that heavy bag. But we're all carrying a lot of emotions and a lot of resentment and anger and frustration on our backs from stuff we've gone through even years and years ago, which we can't do nothing about it. So just drop the bag and take lessons from it. You know what I mean? And that's something that I do myself. It's whatever happened yesterday, I can't change.
But something I want to ask before we call it quits is, if there's one thing you've learned from therapy and you can share with the listeners today, maybe we all go around in a circle and say their one thing, what would yours be, Steve? You can kick things off.
For me, what I learned is just talking, just having somebody's ears there, somebody listening to me who's not going to judge me, but somebody, like I've just said, let go of that rope. For some people, it's not as easy as just letting go of the past. But by getting it out, by talking about it, by speaking about it, it releases those emotions, what's been crippling us. And for me, that's it. It's just having somebody sat there who you can unload all that emotion on, and then they can give you tools and techniques on what you need to do when you walk away. You know, and having that trust in somebody, that trust in a professional, that they know what they're saying, what they're doing, especially if they've been through something themselves. That's a biggie for me as well. Like, there's a lot of therapists out there that have just got a degree from university and never suffered any kind of anxiety, depression, trauma, nothing, and then tell you how you should be feeling. And it's like, that's why you've got to have that rapport with somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, excellent. And Vish, it's really great that you've asked us this, you know, to close this great episode down. And mine is, anybody and everybody, the very fact that you are considering, exploring and researching, going and speaking to someone, and then ultimately a therapist, you remind yourself how strong you are to make that decision. You just remind yourself of that. Just think, well, hang on a minute, I must have a little bit of metal to be able to sit in front of whoever it's going to be and start this conversation. That proves you're stronger than you ever knew.
People come up to me after talks and say, you don't look like a type of person that would struggle with mental health. And I'm like, why? What does somebody look like who struggles with mental health? What they're trying to say is, I don't look like the type of guy that would admit to struggling with mental health. Because I've got tattoos and I work out. But the fact is, it doesn't matter. Like, we've all got that mind inside, and it's really, really powerful, and it's really, really delicate at the same time. And as you've just said, Clive, by talking about it, by admitting that you need to talk to somebody because you're falling into a big, deep, dark hole, or you've got that dark cloud over your head, admitting that you need to talk to somebody, that makes you such a strong person. It's so difficult to admit that you're not coping. I think for all three of us, reaching out and admitting that we needed help it's not only saved all our lives, but it's also shaped our careers
Definitely, yeah.
in the direction that we've all gone. You know what I mean? So we all have a story. We all go through chapters, and if you need help to write that next chapter, then I recommend therapy, because they will help you write that next chapter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyone else got to say?
No, well, I think I'll guess I'll finish up on the one thing that therapy has done for me, and that's something I've never forgotten, and that's the breathing exercises. And I'm not exaggerating this. The one thing that I've always held on through for now 7 years of therapy is the 4-7-8. And that technique is you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, and you breathe out for 8 seconds. And I know it's hard for the first few times, but stay consistent. You'll make it there, and your whole body will just calm down and slow down. But that's for me, mate. That's all I've got for this episode.
Great
A
advice.
difficult one, but a good one.
It's proven it works. And do you know how that works? The 4-7-8.
Yeah, so it just grounds you, doesn't it? And it
breathing in speeds up your heart rate. Breathing out slows it down. So you take a shorter breath in, 4 seconds, speed your heart rate up a bit as you breathe in, hold it, but then you breathe out for 8. So you're doubling that amount of time, and that's what relaxes you, grounds you, brings you back down again. And when you train your body to do that over and over and over, it just keeps your heart at a slow pace, slows your heart rate down to what it should be. So it's ideal. Anxiety, it's absolutely perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's been an absolute pleasure, guys.
Right.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, guys. And thank you to all of you that either listened or watched. And please tune into the next episode of Built for Us.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for viewing this episode. We really appreciate your support. Remember, follow us, subscribe, share with a mate, join us live. Built for Us. Let's build something stronger together.